Hey guys, Arrett here with a guide on improving audio for your stream. So for today, we're going to talk about a handful of different subjects. One is kind of just the problem with doing audio for your stream. Two is going to be what our strategy is for addressing all the different settings and stuff that we need to tweak. Three is going to be a bit on equipment or on placement of that equipment. And then finally, we're going to talk about software and all the different things that you can do to make your stream audio sound really, really good. I'm going to have timestamps down there in the description. So if you're a really experienced streamer and you've already got, your equipment straightened out, you've already fine-tuned a bunch of audio levels, and you really just want to know about the software piece, then go ahead and skip to the end. I do think that in particular, the setting strategy part is probably going to be useful for everybody, particularly as you start getting into tweaking a bunch of different software levels and modifiers and stuff like that. So with that, I want to talk about kind of what the problem is with streaming audio and why it's so difficult to get it right and why it's so difficult to have it consistently right. So the biggest problem is there are a lot of levels if you really think about it. So as a streamer, I've got to deal with the noise in my room, the noise that my keyboard and my mouse make while I'm playing, particularly with games like StarCraft 2, where I'm, pounding on cherry blue keys, I'm clicking away at a mouse. We've got to think about my music volume, the volume of the game itself and the sound effects, which as a gamer, I need to hear, right? I need alerts for when I'm supply blocked or whatever. You need to hear the volume of my voice, right? So that I can interact with chat. And finally, the one that is so easy to forget is my Twitch alert volume, right? So when Streamlabs is saying that somebody is just dropping bans on me, I need to know about that, right? I don't want my music drowning that out or my keyboard so loud that we can't hear it. So having all of these things configured at the right levels can be really, really difficult. Another thing that can really throw a wrench is when the source of your music is different. So if you're playing on Spotify versus a YouTube playlist versus you've got song requests on, right? And you've got some kind of plugin injecting that into your OBS, or, you go on to SoundCloud today or something, any of those can throw everything totally out of whack as well. And even within a playlist, if the levels of the audio on the tracks isn't even, that can throw it too. So you can see what a mess this all pretty quickly becomes, right? So what is our strategy? Our strategy is to basically take the things that are the hardest to change and get them in roughly the right zone first. So things that are really, really difficult to change are like where your microphone is located. It sounds kind of silly, right? Like it's not that hard to slide a mic across the desk or whatever, but it changes dramatically what's happening. The angle of the mic changes dramatically what's going on for certain microphones. So that's a big one. Another big one is just what music are you playing or what game are you playing? For variety streamers, this is even tougher, right? So what we want to do is kind of rough things out in order from biggest change or hardest change to easiest. So the easiest thing to do is to dial a slider bar in software. And we want to try to keep everything else consistent as we're kind of tuning values. So the next bit that we really need to delve into is equipment. So if you are a streamer on a budget, you're, maybe in college, trying to have this be an income source for you and sort of hoping to bootstrap yourself up, you are not going to buy a Blue Yeti probably right out the gate. In that case, from what I've read, and again, I'm not an audio expert, this video is kind of the fruit of me doing a couple of weeks worth of spending my evenings obsessing over my stream audio before I ever started with Twitch. And I think that I learned maybe enough to be dangerous, I guess would be a good way to put it. There are a lot of great videos that go in depth into certain things like equipment or positioning or filters and stuff. A lot of the things that I'm going to briefly touch on. This video is more of an overview because I think a lot of people don't know that this stuff exists. And I think that it's largely invisible, right? Because if the audio is basically pretty good, you're not really going to notice. The only time you're going to notice is when there's a problem. So it's very difficult as a newer streamer to even realize who has good audio and who has bad audio and what does that even mean until you really start to delve into it. So, okay, if you are on a budget, from what I've read, you probably just want to get a lav mic. That's the kind that like clips on. And the reason for that is that it gets it close to your mouth and away from your keyboard and away from your mouse. And from what I understand, they do basically a pretty good job for the money. If you've got kind of some bank to spend, to the tune of a few $100s, you probably want to get like a Blue Yeti is sort of your standard. That's what I have. It's what a lot of people get as kind of their entry level kind of good microphone. But I wouldn't do that unless you also have the money for kind of some of the peripherals as well. Because if you don't get those two, it's going to sound terrible. And you're going to be really bummed that you just dropped $200 or whatever they cost on a mic that doesn't sound good. So from here, I'm just going to assume that you're in the Yeti category. This stuff might work for somebody with a lav mic, but I haven't tested it. I don't know. So the very, very, very next most important thing that you can possibly do for yourself is get your mic off of your desk. If your mic is on your desk, every time you are punching keys, especially if you're a StarCraft person, it's going to pick up the vibrations and it's going to sound bad. If you thump your fist on the table, right, not in anger or whatever, but if you just set it down and it makes a noise, that's going to be so much louder than your voice and so much louder than anything else happening. So you could probably see it poking out here a little bit, but I've got this mic arm that kind of comes out from behind my third monitor over here. And it obscures like a little corner of the monitor, but not a big deal for when I'm streaming. And that kind of gets my mic off the desk and it's floating a pretty good distance above my keyboard and it's pointed at my mouth. That part's important. So the Yeti has a few different modes, and one of the modes is basically it kind of picks up sound in like almost a cone shape in the front of it. I want to say that one's cardioid mode. Double check me on that one. Google that up for which mode you want to have your Blue Yeti set to. That's another thing that goes in that category of really, really, really difficult to change. Well, not difficult. I mean, you turn a dial, but like it's a huge change. So you don't want to fine tune all these little software dials and stuff and then like go, I'm going to change the mode on my Yeti, right? And totally throw everything off. Particularly as you start to get into some of the plug-in stuff like noise canceling, it's going to completely mess you up if you do that. So get that set first before you do anything else. Get that and the location of your mic set up. The other things that you are going to want, so obviously we talked about the arm to get it lifted off the desk. You're probably going to want to get a shock mount. Yeti sells one that is really, really stupidly expensive for what is basically a circle of metal and a hair tie. I looked and looked to try to find one that was confirmed for sure compatible with the Yeti, and I couldn't, so I ended up just throwing money at the problem and saying that my time was worth more than figuring that out. If you can find one and you know of one that for sure works with the Yeti, please say something in the comments so that other people don't have to spend what I spent on this stupid shock mount. But it is really, really important because if I accidentally bang my mic, you're probably going to hear a little bit, but you're not going to hear nearly what you would if I didn't have it on a shock mount and it was picking up all those vibrations. And lastly, you want to get a pop filter. That's this guy. It is basically just a piece of cloth stretched with some plastic, but it's so that when I make E sounds, you don't hear that kind of like that loud popping, that air noise. So that's really important. And those are pretty cheap. You can home make them too, but I think they're maybe $10 or something, so not really a big deal. Just get one. So that's kind of it in terms of equipment and in terms of placement. So basically our last thing, and the thing that I'm going to spend the most time talking about, is software. So you have just the world of options here, and I'm not going to be super, super prescriptive about what you should choose. I'm going to give you the broad overview, and I'm going to give you some of the technical ins and outs, because what you're going to find are lots of videos that say, oh, set your stuff up this way, put in these numbers. That's not going to work for you. The reason that it's not going to work for you is that person's room isn't your room. That person's computer isn't your computer. The fan noise on it is different from yours. Their keyboard is different. The distance between the keyboard and the mic is different. Everything about it is completely different. So nobody can tell you, punch in these numbers and it'll work. You're going to have to fiddle. And if that is annoying or intimidating for you, chances are if you have a successful stream, you don't really need to perfect this stuff. For me, I kind of have a perfectionist attitude about everything. So it was really, really important to me that my stream always sounds good. I do sound checks before almost every stream that I do. And anytime I touch a new playlist, I will compare it against one or two other playlists that I have already kind of dialed in. And I'll make sure that the audio levels between them are right so that they're similar. Okay, so let's dig into kind of what all of this audio software stuff is about. So here you have my OBS, right? And basically what you're looking at is if you click this little gear button, which is on my microphone here, it's going to bring up two options. One is filters and one is properties. If you click into filters, you get to this filters window. And from here, you can add a compressor, gain, noise gate, noise suppression, or any VST 2.x plugin. I'll explain what that means in a minute. So people refer to these as either filters or plugins. You can even see the language within OBS itself is inconsistent between plugin and filter. You'll see tons of guides on how to really refine these and the finer points of what they all do. I know kind of the basics. I'm an engineer by trade, so jumping into sound engineering is like kind of a thing that I could do, but I'm not an expert. So the thing that you need to understand very generally about these is that they're going to take your audio in, and then they're kind of like a magic box that transforms that audio and spits it out a little bit different. And what that different is kind of just depends on which plugin we're talking about. The next thing that you need to know is that these operate in a chain. So if I were to, and I'm not going to do it because it would actually alter the audio on this video here. You can see that I'm recording in OBS right now. But if I were to click, 4 of these on right now, they would be listed here from top to bottom, and they would in fact be applied to my audio from top to bottom. So that kind of imaginary picture that I drew in the air before where I said, your voice comes in and there's a magic box and your voice comes out. Imagine that, but with 4 boxes. So the voice comes in, goes into a magic box, gets morphed and changed a little bit, comes out, pipes into the next box, and so on. So it will modify in series each of the things that you're trying to do. And so that means that ordering can be kind of important here. So I want to talk to you now that you kind of understand those couple of pretty important basic concepts about what each of these filters can do for you. So the simplest to understand one is a noise gate. Basically, the gist there is anything below a certain threshold of noise won't be picked up at all. So very light tapping, something in the other room, maybe like I have my fan on the ceiling. It's probably making some very slight amount of noise, and that's not going to cause my microphone to pick up and start sending audio into OBS. So that's noise gate. Noise suppression is a little bit more complicated. I haven't messed with it in OBS, so I'm not sure if it works the exact same way as the other program that I'm going to show you in a minute, Reaper. But the way that it works, as far as my understanding, is you kind of turn it on, and you hit sort of a record button, and it picks up all of the noise from your room. Just the natural noise that's happening, whether it's your air conditioner on, the fan from your computer just going and going, any little like creaks and stuff that your house might be making, and it kind of develops this profile of what that noise is. Now, during that time, you can't talk because you don't want your voice to be part of that profile it develops, because what it's going to do is take that graph and subtract it out from all of your audio. So hopefully you aren't hearing my air conditioner on or my computer fan at all as I'm making this video. And that is not because I'm in a perfectly quiet room. It's because I'm subtracting out the perfect profile of noises from the audio that you're hearing right now. So that is sort of your suppression, or Reaper calls it FIR, F-I-R. So that one is pretty important for folks who do stuff like cooking streams and stuff. That can also be really good because you might have stuff like the noise from your sink, which can sound really weird. Actually, I was kind of shocked at how odd that sounded the first time that I heard it. And it's just the easiest thing in the world to cut out. I mean, you let it record your room noise for 10 seconds and you're done. That's it. So we're going to talk about compression next, which is the one that I think everybody should be using, because as a streamer, exciting and bad things happen. And sometimes exciting bad things happen, and you yell or you laugh really loud or whatever it is. And that can deafen your audience, and nothing ruins a hype moment more than like having to turn your volume down because you just woke up your significant other or your neighbor, or whatever it is, or you had headphones on, you gotta rip them off, right? Like that's the worst feeling in the world. So what a compressor will do is it basically takes the peaks in your audio and it squashes them down a little bit. So if I were to, and I have a compressor on right now, but if I were to like clap, right, you're going to hear me clap, but it is nowhere near as loud as it would be if I didn't have a compressor on. It would be deafening and terrible if I clapped at point blank range into my mic like that without the compressor on it. So that's really cool. The one thing that OBS doesn't do, and I think I'm probably going to recommend OBS to people out there who want to set this up because it's a little bit simpler. But the one thing that it doesn't do is an equalizer, which Reaper does provide. So Reaper is a program that is free to evaluate. I don't have any connection with them. I just really like their software. It's free to evaluate, but it is paid. It has an unlimited trial, though. So again, if you're that college student who's trying to bootstrap up your stream as an income source, evaluate it for as long as you have to. And then when you're a baller streamer, then buy your license. But if you don't feel like you want an equalizer, I mean, by the time that I got this deep into the rabbit hole, right, I wanted it to be so perfect, so I had to go whole hog and mess with equalizer levels and stuff too, but you probably don't need it. If you do, you're going to want Reaper. So that's kind of the gist of how some of these work, and when you're setting it up, you're going to have to troubleshoot, you're going to have to tweak levels, and I recommend you go look for other YouTube guides on it, because other people have done a much better job than I can at telling you kind of how to set these things up. What I didn't feel was very well covered was like, what the heck does any of this stuff do, right? Why do I want a compressor? Like, okay, I'm trying to test this thing and they're telling me to tweak my levels, but I don't even know what it should do. I kind of had to figure it out by trial and error and looking at Wikipedia, all kinds of crazy research. So that's kind of the gist of how it works. Now, the one difference that I do want to highlight here between OBS and Reaper. So OBS allows you to use any of these 4 built-in plugins or anything that is in this VST 2.x format. I don't know exactly what that is or how it works. I know that the folks at Reaper actually provide for free a set of plugins that do this, so you might even be able to get an equalizer in here if you poke around enough. But it's nice and convenient because it's right here in client for you. You don't need to run anything extra. In order for me to get Reaper to work with OBS, okay, this might mute me, so I'm gonna just show you briefly, and then I'll talk about what I showed you. So we're gonna go options and then preferences. I'm gonna show you my mic source. Okay, so you see that my input device in Reaper is a Blue Yeti, and my output is a thing called virtual audio cable. If you Google virtual audio cable, you'll find that it's a free program. It's a little weird looking when you install it. All it is sort of like a pipe for audio, and you can put things into it, and you can have things pick up what comes out of it. So Reaper is shoving audio into that pipe that it has. Okay, so it takes my microphone, it does some stuff, and then it puts it into the pipe of the virtual audio cable. And then on the OBS side, right, if I go down here and I click into my properties, you'll see that my device here is not my Blue Yeti, it's my cable output from my virtual audio cable. So the point there is that you got to do this kind of weird secret handshake thing to get Reaper to work. Whereas if you just use it in client OBS, then everything kind of just works for you out of box, and you sort of just go in here and you stack your filters up. Last thing that I do want to show you is my effects on my mic and the order that I have them. So I've got my noise gate first, which again is just let's cut out the very, very quiet stuff. Then I've got my fur, which is let's drop out all of the weird noise that I don't want you to hear, like my air conditioner or my computer fan. Then I've got the compression, which is, when I yell because I got dropped by a widow mine or whatever, you don't hear me really yelling. You'll hear my voice, but it'll sound kind of more at a conversational level. And then finally, I've got an equalizer that is doing just a little bit of tweaks to make my voice sound in the video a little bit more like it sounds in my own head, so that it's like less disturbing for me to rewatch my VODs. That's really the only reason, to be honest. So yeah, this is my video on how to make your stream audio great. If you know more about this than me, or if there's a tip that I missed, please hit me up on Twitter at EraSC2. And if you discover any easier ways or anything like that to do this, I just hope that we can all make each other's streams awesome. Like, I want people to look at StarCraft 2, and I want people to look at Twitch, the Twitch community in general, and be like, wow, like their production is so good for kind of this like hobbyist community, right? I want people to just look at it and realize how awesome it can be. And so if I can help any of you guys out there tweaking any of these things that might be a problem for you, that makes me just super, super stoked. So let me know if this works for you. Let me know if it doesn't work for you and you have to troubleshoot some stuff, or if you can help me with issues that I'm having with it. That's all very, very welcome. One other tip that I almost forgot is, okay, so we talked before about it being a real pain. For instance, maybe usually I use YouTube as my music source, and today I want to use something from SoundCloud, but the SoundCloud audio adjustment is like really bad, right? Oops, that's not what I want. So what you can do is go into your volume mixer, right? And if, say I had Chrome here, and that was my YouTube player, you can volume dial it here in Windows. So what I do, particularly for SoundCloud, which is a problem for me, is I'll play it in Firefox. So I have my normal browser with my normal audio levels and whatever for YouTube that seems perfect for everything. And then I've got a separate browser with a separate volume dial so that I can tweak just the problematic music source. And that seems to work out really, really great for me. The only problem is that if you do that, where you have a browser set to kind of your perfect audio for your stream, and then you go to watch a YouTube video just for yourself, you don't want to tweak the audio levels. So the hack for that is either just have so many browsers that you can devote a couple of them to just streaming audio sources, or incognito mode to watch whatever YouTube video you need that is too quiet. So those are kind of my tips and tricks. If you guys have any, I'm more than happy to hear them, and I hope that you found something helpful. Take care.